It's time for your Low Country real estate market update. It's the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. Brian is one of the top 1% real estate agents in Charleston. Find him online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. Now, broadcasting from the WTMA studios, here's your host, Brian Beatty.
Good morning, Charleston. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and thanks for joining me this morning as we talk about all things real estate here in the Charleston area. If this is your first time tuning in, the focus of the show is fairly simple. I like to focus on national, regional, local news. Apply that to you, the homeowner or the home buyer here in the Low Country area, so that when it comes time to buy or sell a house, you're an informed decision maker. I've got a lot to talk with you about this morning. I'm going to start first by talking about something that I don't talk about very often on this show, and that's renters. And if you're a renter, wow, do I feel for you right now. Our market, this is the time of year where we as real estate agents, we just don't really sleep. There is so much to do on a daily basis. It's when people want to list their house. It's when people want to consider buying a house. It's when we have our largest influx of leads as real estate agents. But if you're a tenant or a potential tenant, you're out there, you're looking for a new property to rent. And don't get me wrong, if you're a landlord, if you're somebody that owns investment property, man, you've got it great because you've got all of these tenants fighting over rental properties. And in many cases, these property managers are getting 5, 10. I've heard stories of property managers getting 20 or more rental applications on a rental property, and that's $50 a pop to submit a rental application. So there's a very interesting thing happening in our rental market right now. And that's what I want to talk with you about first. Now, I'm in the studio. If you have questions for me this morning, you'd like to contact me, the number here is 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. If you'd like to reach me personally, if there's a question that you have, you're considering buying, selling, or investing in real estate, again, I am one of the top agents here in town, would love the opportunity to earn your business. I can be reached by calling my cell phone at 843-345-1273, or you can go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, and on that website, you can take a look at everything I have for sale, everything I've sold, which we're in the process of updating. We just changed around the functionality on our website so that you can search homes more efficiently. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee, which essentially states that I will sell your house in 59 days or less, or I'll sell it for half my commission. So listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to for that. And again, the number here in the studio, 843-556-1250. Now, let me talk about what's going on here with this rental market. There's something very interesting happening, and that is the gap between rental costs and household income. That gap is widening to what I feel to be a fairly unsustainable level in many areas of Charleston and nationwide as well. I was looking at an article and kind of compared that to some things that I've seen in our market. And I looked over the past 5 years, and nationally, rents have risen about 15% across the board. Okay, this is nationally, while income has only risen 11%. So we have this increased cost to rent your property with a wage increase that doesn't necessarily support that increase in your living expenses, right? But I took a look at this and applied it to our Charleston market and found some very interesting things out. In March of 2011, the average rent in the Charleston Tri-County area was about $1,100. Right now, the average rent is $1,400. That's an increase over a 4-year period of 30%. 30% more over a 4-year period. Now, have wages increased 30%? Certainly not over the past 4 years. But here's another interesting statistic. In March of 2011, the average home value in the Charleston Tri-County area was $170,000. Right now, it's $190,000. That's an increase of only 12%. So rents have increased 30% in the Charleston Tri-County area, but the value of properties have only increased 12%. Isn't that interesting? But remember, all real estate is local. So here's an interesting example of how that is incredibly applicable. In Mount Pleasant, the average value of a home in January of 2014 was $277,000. Right now, it's $360,000. That's an increase of 30%. Rent, on the other hand, in January of 2011 was about $1,700. It was $1,750 was the average rent in January of 2011. Right now, it's $2,300. That's an increase of 32%. So over the past 4 years, in Mount Pleasant and in several other areas of Charleston, I'm seeing this across the board, in the majority of areas here, rents have increased to such a phenomenally high price in such a short amount of time that it makes it very difficult for the tenants that would be potential home buyers to save enough money for their down payment and their closing costs and everything else that comes with the cost of home ownership. And they're having difficulty breaking out of renter versus buyer. So you see how difficult it is for renters to save money based on the fact that in some areas of Charleston, their rent has jacked up 30% over the past 4 years. And if you're looking for a rental property right now, good luck, because there's plenty of people that are fighting over the good rental properties, but you still have to pay your application fee. Property managers, is it an ethical thing to do to continue to take rental applications when you've already submitted several to the homeowner to review? I don't know. Is that gray area? Probably. Are you just doing your job by providing quality potential tenants to the homeowner? Yes. But as a tenant, it sure doesn't make it any easier when you go out and you look at 10 different rental properties. And if you have to spend $50 per rental application, things add up pretty quickly. That's $500 just in application fees to see if you can rent a property. And then you've got first and last month's rent. If you got a pet, you're going to have to pay probably $250 per pet. That's non-refundable. So our rental market is kind of in this, it's in the spiral right now where if the rents don't stop increasing so rapidly, or if wages don't get to the point where the increase in rent supports that, then it's going to be very difficult for these renters to become buyers. So how do we fix that? Well, a way to fix that is for new construction to start providing inventory at that first-time home buyer level. The problem with that is that builders are going for the low-hanging fruit right now. The average sales price in Charleston County for a new construction home is $370,000. That's not necessarily first-time home buyer price range. For some it is, but not for most. And so the issue is builders are fearful that first-time home buyers just don't have access to the credit that they need after having paid for student loans and taking on debt to make it through tough times. Maybe they're living at home. They just don't have the income to buy a new house. And so builders are going for kind of that mid-grade buyer right now, somebody that might have already sold their first home and now they want to buy new construction. So as a potential buyer, how do you save up enough money for your down payment, your closing costs, and prepare yourself to purchase a new house? Well, maybe it means scaling back a little bit on the lifestyle and saving up some money so that when it comes time to buy a house, you've cleaned up your credit. You've only got 3.5% of the total purchase price is what you're required to bring to the table as a down payment if you're using an FHA loan. So let's say you're buying a $200,000 house. Well, that's $7,000. And as long as you can get $7,000 stowed away, you can always ask the seller to pay your closing costs. And then you're going to have some other costs, of course, associated with buying the property. You've got to move. You've got the expenses associated with that. You might want to do some things to the property. You don't have to, but that's something to take into consideration. So if you're buying a $200,000 house, you probably need about $10,000 saved in order to buy that house. It makes it very difficult to do that when rents are escalating this quickly. So if you're a renter, I really do feel for you. And it's certainly something that I've seen happen on my own rental properties. I'm an investor. I buy properties, I rent them out, and it's very challenging for investors to see the potential return on investment now versus several years ago. Remember that I just told you that specifically in Mount Pleasant, prices have risen 30% since January of 2011. So if you want to buy a rental property in Mount Pleasant, it's very hard to listen to the stories that real estate agents or other friends that you might have say about well, yeah, I bought this great property a few years ago and I'm renting it out and I'm earning a 10% cash on cash return on my investment. You have to take into account that they bought it at a certain price several years ago. That doesn't apply now. And it's very hard if you're an investor to find those attractive return on investment numbers because of the increase in price. The good news is that rents have increased as well. So if you're thinking about investing in real estate, or if you want to buy your first home, there's a lot more that we can discuss. Would love the opportunity to help you with that. Feel free to reach out to me by going to my website, listingsincharleston.com. Leave your information. We'll have a conversation about it. Or feel free to call into the studio. I'm live this morning. Would love the opportunity to answer some questions on air. The number here is 843-556-1250. 843-556-1250. I'm going to take a break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about where do we find those really good deals in a seller's market. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. We'll be right back.
Hear the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show every Saturday morning at 8 on 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com. WTMA. Expert news and views on the Lowcountry real estate scene. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I'm your host, Brian Beatty, and thanks again for joining me this morning. I am in the studio, so if you have any questions real estate related, would love the opportunity to have a quick chat with you over the air. The number here, 843-556-1250, 843-556-1250. Now, if you'd like to reach me personally, you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, feel free to give me a call personally. My cell phone is 843-345-1273. That's 843-345-1273. Or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com, and you can take a look at everything I have for sale, everything I've sold. Search the MLS, and if you're thinking about selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about what I do to market my homes for sale, the success I've had with that, and you can also learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee, which is very simple. It states that I will sell your house in 59 days or less, or I'll sell it for half my commission. So contact me for more information on that, listingsincharleston.com, or feel free to call me here in the studio, 843-556-1250. So if you're just joining us, we were talking about how difficult it is right now for tenants to save up the cash necessary to become a first-time home buyer or to get back into home ownership if they had some sort of issue with their income. Maybe they lost their job. They had some sort of issue that caused them to sell their house. Maybe they did a short sale and they had to rent for a while and now they want to buy again. And we talked about how quickly rent has increased over the past several years, as well as how much the average sales price has increased in several areas of Charleston over the past few years, and how it's challenging to save up the money when the wage increases just aren't matching the increase in rental prices and home prices. So maybe you want to be on the other end of that. Maybe you want to be an investor. Maybe you want to be the person that benefits from having a lot of tenants with very little inventory that are willing to pay top dollar to rent your property. So that's what I want to talk about now is how do we find the good deals in a market that is very clearly a seller's market? Sellers, for the most part, are in the driver's seat right now, okay? There's limited inventory. There's a lot of buyers fighting over good listings. And it's just going to depend on you as the investor and, first of all, your threshold for risk, your tolerance for risk. And then number two, the area that you want to be in. And of course, lastly, the expected return on investment in order to make the purchase worthwhile. And I talk about this quite a bit on my program, is how do we look at buying an investment property? It is numbers driven, right? We have an expected return on investment as our goal. And if we can fit that goal into some sort of property, then we make an offer on it. If we can't, we don't. So how do we find those good deals when there are clearly several investors out there, whether they be the guy that lives across the street that has some extra income that wants to buy an additional rental property, to the people that this is what they do for a living, is they buy and sell properties, or they buy and hold properties to rent them out. And of course, we have the national investors that have targeted Charleston, and because of the incredible growth we've seen, and they're buying, in some cases, hundreds of homes. Perfect example is American Homes for Rent. They own hundreds of homes here, and they're making pretty decent offers. They're banking on the continued appreciation in our market is what they're doing. So how do we find these good deals? Let's talk first about short sales and foreclosures. Not a lot is going on in that segment of our market right now, I'll be honest. It's just not as lively as it was several years ago. And I know that used to be almost all of what I did. I'd say that from 2008 until parts of 2012, some parts of 2013, almost all of what I targeted were short sales and foreclosures because that's where all the activity was, right? As a business person, you go where the activity is. So I educated myself in short sales, foreclosures, represented multiple investors, buyers, and sellers to help them through that process. And so if I look at it now, wow, has it changed? There's just not a lot of inventory out there. It used to be that if you were an investor, where do you go first? You go to short sales and foreclosures. That's still the case in some examples right now. But for the most part, I got to tell you, banks are not as willing to reduce their price as they once were. And the reason for that is a lack of inventory. I looked at a statistic, or I just ran some numbers in the MLS when I did my Friday call-in during Charlie James's show on Friday mornings. And I said there were about 300 short sales and foreclosures available for sale right now out of 5,400 homes for sale. That is a drop in the bucket. That's not a lot of inventory. That's less than 5% of our inventory is short sales and foreclosures. So for a bank to significantly reduce their price to sell it quickly when they've got all these buyers fighting over inventory and lack thereof, they're actually expecting to sell those properties for fairly close to fair market value. There's just not a ton of incentive for them to drop the price way down because they can sell it for the most part at a higher price. So there's one part of buying foreclosures that seems to still be fairly attractive, and that's the auction process. When foreclosures go to auction, there's always a reserve. My understanding of it is that there's always a reserve, but that reserve can sometimes be fairly low. So it's up to those individual buyers that are interested in that property to make bids. You can start your bid, it's way low, like $25,000 for a $150,000 property. Of course, it will never sell for that because the reserve is much higher. But there's a pretty decent opportunity if you're willing to go forward with doing the auction process and purchasing a foreclosure. But here's the kicker. You've got to read the fine print with these auctions. They like to charge you a 5% buyer premium. So if you buy it for $100,000, you're going to have to pay an additional $5,000 to that auction company. It's essentially the auction company passing off the cost of running the auction to you, the buyer. They call it a buyer premium. And that's 5% of the total purchase price. That has to come in the form of cash. My understanding of it, at least. So you've got a 5% buffer added onto the purchase price of the property, and then in their infinite wisdom, they decide to reduce the buyer agent's commission to 1%. So buyer agents that are helping their buyers purchase a property that in and of itself is a very challenging process to make sure that you're protected properly, they're only paying a 1% commission. And I got to be honest, if I'm going to go through the process of helping you buy a foreclosure, protecting you, making sure that you're making the right investment, and doing everything that I need to do to help you purchase that property, then my fee is 3%. So the buyer needs to bring an additional 2% to the table so I can earn a standard commission. I'm not asking for any more than what I would earn if we went and bought something else. I'm just asking to be compensated what I usually am compensated. So if I'm going to help you buy a foreclosure, which is a harder transaction 99% of the time than just a regular resale property, then you've got the additional 2% commission. So you've got 7% of the purchase price that has to be tacked on to the winning bid. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. And that's cash. So auctions are a way to go, but you have to understand that if you're going to work with a buyer agent to help you through that process, it's going to cost you an extra 7% above the winning bid amount. All right. Now, I talk about foreclosures, and sometimes banks get it right and they sell the property at an attractive enough price to make it worth an investor's while. The return on investment numbers work out. But I got to tell you, some of these banks are just straight up dumb. I'm being honest. I've got a perfect example of that. There's a high-end foreclosure listed for sale. It's been on the market for 6 months, and it's a high-priced foreclosure. My client, who lives in Mount Pleasant, who owns a very attractive house, went to the bank with my help and said, hey, we will pay you full price. We will give you exactly what you want. We just want you to give us 60 days to sell our house. After 60 days, our earnest money becomes non-refundable, but we want 60 days to sell our house. We'll give you exactly what you want. Bank said no. So here the homeowner is saying, I will give you the exact price you want. You've been on the market for 6 months. I am very confident that they can sell their house in a few weeks because they'd price it aggressively. They'd price it to sell. Well, the bank said no. And so what's happened since that offer? They've dropped their price like $25,000. They lost $25,000 on the idea that my client might not sell their house, even though after 60 days, the earnest money would become non-refundable. It's just, it's kind of crazy sometimes. The way that you make money, in my opinion, on foreclosures is to buy the ones that need work. When you buy foreclosures that need work, whether it be cosmetic or structural or whatever the case might be, the available pool of buyers is very small because you can't use an FHA mortgage. You can't use a VA mortgage. You have to do conventional for homes in that kind of condition. And of course, you have to have the cash to fix them up. Now, for those of you that are listening that understand, the lending market, yes, you could do an FHA 203K loan. If the bank will allow you to do that, that's kind of a complicated process. But to make things simple, the way that you make money on foreclosures right now, and short sales for that matter, is by buying the ones that need work. The sweat equity that you put into that property usually turns into equity once that property is finished. So you've got foreclosures as a viable option if you want to try and find a good deal. And that's what we're talking about right now, is how do we find the good deals in this market? If you want to call me, ask me some questions about foreclosures, short sales, anything else real estate related, give me a call, 843-556-1250. Now, another way of finding really good deals right now would be pocket listings. So a pocket listing, for those of you that don't know what that is when a seller says to an agent, I'm going to sell my house, but I do not want it on the MLS. I don't want it broadcasted on the MLS. I don't want to officially sell my house. But if you have a buyer, I'll sell it to them and I'll pay you a commission. So that's a pocket listing. And sometimes those can be good deals. But if you think about that just in terms of the seller's perspective, most of the time the sellers are saying, hey, I don't really want to go through the process of listing my house and marketing it and having people run in and out of here. I'll sell it, but I'm only going to sell it if you pay my price. So for the most part, pocket listings and sellers that say, yeah, I'll sell it, but I'm not going to list it, they're not really all that motivated. Sometimes they are. Most of the time, they're not. So how do we find those sellers that have to sell? How do we find those really good deals? Well, I think that the answer right now is to align yourself with a real estate agent that's getting put in touch with these types of people. As real estate agents, we're, of course, in two businesses. We're in the business of helping people buy and sell real estate, and we're in the business of finding people that need to buy and sell real estate. And the people that sell more real estate are the people that find the people that want to buy or sell real estate, right? So the more people that contact me on a weekly, monthly, annual basis that say, hey, Brian, I need to sell my house. I know you have access to investors. I personally have a database of over 10,000 people that I maintain. And so when opportunities like that come up and they say, hey, I need to sell my house and I need to sell it now, if I can't make them an offer, I sure as heck know plenty of people that will. And if they're too tied up with other projects, we put it on the market. We broadcast the opportunity for the investment to other agents that work with those types of buyers, and we sell it quickly. And that's not a goal of a lot of sellers, by the way, to list their house and to sell it under fair market value as a quote unquote fire sale. Fire sale being the buzzword there. No, even homeowners that don't necessarily need to sell when I suggest a price that might be lower than what they had anticipated, I would say, well, this isn't a fire sale. We don't need to go that low. A fire sale is, hey, I am sacrificing fairly significant equity to sell my house right now. I got to go. Something has happened in my life. I got to sell my house. So, sellers that need to sell, they're going to contact real estate agents. So if you contact an agent that does a lot of business, the more business they do, the more leads they get, the greater the opportunity to find somebody that has to sell. Now, the last thing that I'm going to say about finding attractive homes at attractive prices is to just make some offers, okay? Most sellers won't admit that they really have to sell. And most listing agents aren't necessarily going to broadcast to the world that the seller has to sell and will look at any offer, whether it be a ridiculous one or not. Most of the time, the listing agent's job is to sell their house for the most money possible. Well, excuse me, let me rephrase that. All the time, real estate agent's job is to sell the property for the most money possible. However, if the seller's goal is to sell quickly, now I need to sell as of yesterday, then yes, we're going to have to sacrifice some equity to sell your property. But you're not going to find that out unless you get out there and you start making some offers. And that's how I have bought some of my investment properties. I've made multiple offers on multiple properties. Prices came back higher than what I wanted. I moved on. I've got a model that I use to determine what the price is that I can buy that house for in order to accomplish my return on investment. And if the price comes in higher than that, I just move on. It's not an emotional deal for me. Now, I do sometimes take into account appreciation. I might be willing to pay a little bit more for a property if I know that it's in an area that's going to result in rapid appreciation for me. But I look at the hard numbers. I look at the rental income. I look at the expenses, and I determine what my return on my cash investment is versus doing something else with that cash, putting it in the stock market, giving it to my broker to say, hey, do something with this money, make my money. So the best way, in my opinion, is to align yourself with a real estate agent that's generating these types of leads. And to number two, get out there, start looking at properties and start making some offers. I'm not talking about ridiculous offers. I'm talking about low offers that would fit your model. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to give me a call. 843-556-1250 is the number here in the studio. Or feel free to visit me online, listingsincharleston.com. And of course, if you're a seller that has to sell, give me a call or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we're going to talk about one of the realtors' favorite tactics in this market, which is underpricing your house to sell it fast and make a quick buck. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
More stimulating talk on real estate matters with Brian Beatty next on 1250 WTMA. WTMA. Now, here's more of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA.
Welcome back, Charleston. Thanks again for tuning in to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. I always like to take just a few moments to say thank you very much for taking the time to listen to me talk about the real estate market here. It's always very humbling when you call me and you say, hey, Brian, I'd like your help in buying or selling a house. And just want to say thanks for the opportunity to help you out. If you'd like to contact me, you're thinking about buying, selling, or investing in real estate, best way to do that is to go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. And on that website, you can take a look at everything I have for sale. You can see everything I've sold, search the MLS. And if you're thinking about selling your house, click on the Sell Your Home tab. You can learn more about what I do to market my homes for sale. And you can also learn more about my 59-day home sale guarantee at 4.5% commission. So listingsincharleston.com is the website to go to. Or you can call me here in the studio, ask me your questions live over the air, and I'll do my best to answer them. The number here is 843-556-1250. So before we broke, we were talking about how to find really good deals in our market. And one of the things that I'd mentioned is when sellers have to sell, their price is going to reflect that. So I want to talk about kind of the opposite of that because I had a very interesting, I'll put it that way. I had a very interesting conversation with a seller earlier this week that had their house on the market for all of 2013, all of last year, and it didn't sell. So I saw it on the MLS. I called her up and said, hey, I'd like an opportunity to help you sell your house if you're willing. So we set an appointment. We met at her house, and we talked about everything that I do to market my homes for sale. And then, of course, we talked about what I thought our house was worth. Well, my idea on what her house was worth and her idea on what her house was worth was way off. There was about a 25% gap in what I thought it was worth versus what she thought it was worth. And when I went through all the listings and I told her, this is what's sold in your area. These are the adjustments that we make for things like condition and upgrades. And this is the resulting value of what I feel your home will sell for. She at that point in time, went on about a 30-minute rampage about how we as real estate agents really don't care at all about selling the house for fair market value. All we want to do as real estate agents is put a really low price on the house, sell it fast, make money without spending money, and then move on to the next sucker. That was basically her outlook on what real estate agents do. And even after telling her everything that I do to market my homes for sale, which is a very elaborate and, quite frankly, very costly endeavor for me, she was still convinced that I was out to take advantage of her. And you just, in this industry, you're always going to get those types of people. You're going to get that with, I think, any industry, right? So I excused myself from her home. I said, thank you very much. I'm sorry, but I can't help you at that price. I walked away from the agreement or the potential agreement. And I think what people sometimes don't take into consideration is that we as real estate agents, man, we get beat up on a daily basis, whether it be price or why haven't you sold my house yet, or what are you not doing that you should be doing to sell my home, so on and so forth. And again, what a lot of realtors, what a lot of sellers don't realize is that it doesn't matter if it's a good market, soft market, stable market, bad market. We're constantly accused of wanting to list your house at too low of a price so it'll sell quickly, so we don't have to work as hard. It's easy for us to be painted as the bad guy. And we also hear that, we as real estate agents, all we want to do is list your home at a really high price so we make more commission. We also hear that all buyer agents want to do is collude with the listing agent to make you buy it at a higher price so we get a higher commission. We also get, all we want to do is find out what the lowest price is and then talk to the buyer agent about that, tell them to make that offer so that we can sell it fast. It doesn't matter which way it goes. It's easy to paint us, the real estate agent, as the bad guy to try and, in some way, shape, or form, take advantage of a seller or a buyer to make a quick buck. But I want to give you guys a very clear understanding of what runs through a listing agent's mind when they go to potentially list your house for sale. What most realtors know what your house is worth, right? And most can do a pretty good job of analyzing home sales to determine that number. Every agent has a different tolerance for risk when it comes to taking your listing at a certain price. And I'll freely admit that I've taken listings at a higher price than what I thought it would sell for, so long as the seller's motivation to sell is real. It makes zero sense for me, or any other agent for that matter, to take a listing if the sellers don't really want to sell and the price is unrealistic. If we're just spinning our wheels, frankly, I would prefer not to spend my marketing dollars and my time and my team's time trying to market a home that I don't think is going to sell. But here's what most listing agents that are struggling to find listings right now are doing, is they're just telling you the price that you want to hear so that they can get the listing. And here's what they're thinking. If I get the listing, regardless of whether it sells or not, so long as I get a few buyer leads to try and help them sell something else to replace this lost transaction, then I'm going to take the listing. And I think that from a seller's perspective, that has to be one of the scariest things for you to have knowledge of. Is this realtor telling me the truth about what my house is worth? Are they setting the right expectation with me? Or is this more about them? Are they just interested in the leads that they're going to get from my house? And again, we're in a seller's market. Listings for a lot of agents are very hard to come by. It depending upon the market, people are always going to gravitate toward the top agents in the market, right? For me, I sell a lot of listings. I get a lot of listings on a monthly basis. The volume and the number of transactions that I do for listings is very, very high. It's one of the top in our market. So how does a newer agent compete with somebody like me? They tell the seller the price that the seller wants to hear. Now, from my perspective, I am more than happy to walk away from a potential listing if I don't think that seller is realistic about their price. Why? Because it costs me a pretty decent chunk of change to market your home for sale. I have initial costs with professional photography. I have severe costs with regard to compensating my team and my administrative staff to make sure that we're doing everything that we should be doing from a marketing perspective to create exposure from your house. And then, of course, I have my time in communicating with you about what's happening in the market, what people are saying as they walk through the house, so on and so forth. There's this element of time spent on your transaction that is probably the biggest decision point for that potential real estate agent, is how much is my time worth to potentially take an overpriced listing that may or may not ever sell. And so for sellers, if you're thinking about selling your house and you have a real estate agent that brings you a printout of everything that's sold in the neighborhood and they tell you the average price per square foot and they tell you to list at that average price, that's a very lazy and borderline negligent way of pricing a house. They need to look at every single house that's sold that's comparable to yours, make individual adjustments for the condition and the upgrades of those homes in comparison to yours to come up with what they feel is fair market value, and to also give you an expectation of how long it's going to take to sell at that price, right? We've got two things here. We've got sell in a very short amount of time or sell for the highest price possible. It might take you more time to sell at the higher price than it would if you dropped your price way down, right? But what does every seller want? They want both. They want to sell at the highest price possible, and they want to sell in a relatively short amount of time. So I just want you guys to understand that as a listing agent, I understand what other listing agents are thinking when they walk through your house and they suggest a price and you say, oh, well, we were thinking this price. I would have the real estate agent justify their price first before you fall into their trap of saying, well, how much were you thinking about selling your house for? That's a classic trap from real estate agents. How much do you want for your house so I can tell you that number? And then that way we're on the same page, and maybe a few months down the road when it doesn't sell, you'll go to my price. That's what listing agents are thinking. So just be careful out there if you're thinking about selling your house. Interview your agents. Make sure they understand how to price a home. When we come back, we're going to talk about doing some things to fix up your house to create the biggest return on investment. So stick around. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show here on the Big Talker 1250 WTMA. Call me in the studio, 843-556-1250. Only a few minutes left to do that. And don't forget to visit me online, listingsincharleston.com.
Have a real estate question? Ask Brian Beatty. Send him an email, lowcountryhomesales@gmail.com. The Brian Beatty Real Estate Show is on 1250 WTMA. You're listening to the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker, 1250 WTMA and WTMA.com.
Welcome back, Charleston, and thanks again for tuning in as we finish up this hour talking about real estate here in the Charleston area on the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show. If you have any questions for me, feel free to call me in the studio. Just a few minutes left to do that. The number here, 843-556-1250. And, of course, if you have a question for me personally, you want to talk with me about buying or selling real estate, give me a call at 843-345-1273 or go to my website, listingsincharleston.com. So before we took a break, we were talking about how sellers are of this mindset that all real estate agents want to do is price their house really, really low so they can sell it fast, not have to work as hard, make a quick buck, and then move on to the next person. And I talked about what listing agents are thinking about when they walk through a seller's house and potentially take that listing. And what I want to say is this. If you price your house correctly, not underpriced, not overpriced, but if you price it correctly based on trends and comps within that neighborhood, and your home is in good condition, and you hire somebody like me that understands how to market properties for sale, your house is going to sell. And in most cases, it should sell in 60 days or less. So, and I think I've already sold maybe a dozen homes this year in a week or less. That's not because I underpriced it. It's because I just priced it correctly and I understand what buyers are looking for, We market the heck out of the house, and it's just a matter of connecting the dots between what buyers are looking for and how they're searching for real estate, and then promoting your specific house for sale to connect those dots and find that buyer. So again, if you want to list your house for sale, give me a call, 843-345-1273, or go to listingsincharleston.com. With just a few minutes left, I wanted to rifle off this list of 10 simple fixes you can do to instantly raise your home's selling price. And forgive me, but I'm going to be kind of quick with this because I want to get through it. So I'm just going to go for it. Number one is staging. Add a couple air fresheners to different areas of your house. If you get used to the smell in your own house, and especially if you have pets, throw some air fresheners up, rearrange your furniture, buy some inexpensive flowers, freshen things up a little bit. The average cost on that, according to this report by Home Gain, is $75. The average increase in the sales price is $1,500 to $2,000. Not a bad way of increasing the sales price of your house for a very small investment. Number two, just cleaning and organizing. It doesn't cost you much to just clean your house and pull some weeds and get it looking good for potential buyers. And think about it this way. It's a wake-up call for a lot of sellers that want to also buy a house. They look at homes for sale that they want to buy once their home sells, and they see some of these homes that are really clean. They're well-staged. They've got fresh flowers. They touched up their paint, and things look really good. Then they come back to their house and they say, oh, gosh, yeah, maybe I have neglected my home a little bit. So it's a really good wake-up call when you start looking at homes for sale and then compare that to what your home looks like, because think about it from the buyer's perspective. If a buyer goes out and they look at a bunch of homes that are in great condition, and then they come to yours and it's not clean and it's unorganized, you've got some clutter, how are buyers going to feel? Buyers are going to feel like, hey, if I'm going to inherit some of these projects, some of this neglected maintenance from this homeowner, then I'm going to want to be compensated for it. And how am I going to get compensation for it? In the form of a lower offer and hopefully a lower purchase price. So protect your investment by doing simple things like cleaning, doing some landscaping. The average cost on that's about $100. The average return on investment is $1,500. Number three is cleaning your carpet. That's pretty simple. We get used to living in our own homes, and we get used to spots on carpet and things like that. So get a good carpet cleaning, use a Groupon or use some sort of coupon online and get an inexpensive carpet cleaning for a few areas of your home. Average cost on that's $100. Average return on investment, $1,000 to $1,500. Number four is just to brighten your home. Make sure that you open all blinds, turn on lights before people come through. You don't want your house looking dark and dreary when people walk through it. Number five is plumbing and electrical. Just fix any sort of plumbing or electrical issues you have. They might not be able to see it, but when they do a home inspection, those things always come up, and almost every buyer asks for those repairs because they're afraid of them. They're afraid that there might be bigger issues there than what they personally can handle. Most people don't, also dabble in electrician work and plumbing work. Okay, so just take care of those things. Number six is flooring. Make sure that the hardwoods are nice and buffed, that the carpet's cleaned. Sweep your floors, make those pop, make those look as nice as you possibly can. Landscaping, mow, edge your yard, pull some weeds, make sure that everything looks good, clean and crisp. Again, that's the first impression that people see when they walk up to your house. Make sure that looks good. Interior paint is probably the easiest thing through the help of something. I'm going to give you a really good tip here. Buy a magic eraser from Mr. Clean. Those things are awesome. If you've got scuffs on your walls, all you do is just wet the magic eraser, you rub it on there, and most of the time it'll take those scuffs right out. So if you never heard of a magic eraser before, go and buy one, test it out on an area that might be inconspicuous in your house, and I can almost guarantee you that that's going to work. And that's probably one of my best tips of the day, magic erasers. Kitchens and bathrooms, that's where people spend most of their time. That's where they entertain. Clean those things up, take out the trash, make sure they smell good. And then the last thing is exterior paint. That's probably last on the list, but touch that up, make sure that looks good, because although they might not see it right now as something that would prevent them from making an offer, it's something that's going to inevitably come up in an inspection that they're going to want to purchase your house for less on. So that's the list of top 10 things, and my quick take on it is every house is different. We need to focus more on repairs than renovations so that we can maximize that return on investment. And it might not be that we get the amount of money that we spend back on your house, but maybe it'll sell in a short amount of time. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show on the Big Talker 1250. Again, reach out to me, listingsincharleston.com, or give me a call, 843-345-1273. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
Join us for another edition of the Brian Beatty Real Estate Show next Saturday morning from 8 till 9. Contact Brian Beatty online at listingsincharleston.com. That's listingsincharleston.com. Or call him at 843-345-1273. 843-345-1273.